Hi, I'm Glenn. Welcome to LA's Difficult Book Club. I'd like to share with you the 12 books we will be reading in our first year together. We start the year with a story about a totalitarian state, 1984. Then we read a book of poetry about love, healing, and other things, Milk and Honey. Then we have two books about animating the machine, Ex Machina and Frankenstein. And then, well, if you consider Los Angeles hell, then we have two books about hell, Inferno and Los Angeles, the Architecture of Four Ecologies. Then two books about gender, Orlando, where our title character changes genders, and The Left Hand of Darkness, where we visit a world called Winter, where they have only one gender. Then three books about the king and his son, the Odyssey about Odysseus and Telemachus, Hamlet about the ghost of the dead king and his son, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, and Ulysseys about Leopold Bloom and his sort of adoptive-ish son, Stephen Dedalus. And then finally we finish our year with a slim, sweet book about books, about a 20-year correspondence across the Atlantic, 84 Charing Cross Road. Okay, so we start with George Orwell's 1984, and the book I have is a very pretty, and a little bit more expensive book from the Folio Society edition. And I should say about editions that since many of our books are classics, there will be multiple editions. Get any edition you want. For the books that originated in a language other than English, there will be multiple editions as well as multiple translations. Get any edition you like, get any translation you like, illustrated, annotated, whatever works for you. And all of these books will be readily available in your local library. So you can absolutely do the entire year for $0. If you'd like to own a copy, you can visit your local independent bookstore and pick up an inexpensive copy. And again, since they're classics, many of these books also will have sort of fancy premium editions if you want a collector's edition. They're kind of sweet, but certainly nobody needs that. $0 for the year is just fine. So this Folio Society edition is pretty cool. Anyway, George Orwell, Fun in Dystopia, 1984. That's for August 2026. Moving on to September 2026, we have Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. So this book was published in 2014, and I'm holding the 2024 10th anniversary edition, which has some handwritten diary entries and other kind of cool elements. Once again, any book you want to read, the 14 edition, the 24 edition, it's all good. Then in October, we read a screenplay, and the film studio A24 has started putting out these very, very lovely and a little bit more expensive screenplays of books. Volume number 1 is Ex Machina, and it features the complete screenplay by Garland, as well as film stills and production design sketches and a couple of pretty interesting essays. So you can buy this if you want, again, to own a pretty copy, but I've put in the meeting notes, I've put several links to places that you can download a PDF of the screenplay for free. So once again, $0 is all it takes. Or if you'd like to own a nice book, you can have a nice book about what our future present with machines might be. And then in November, a past future. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This particular book is the 1831 version. of this sort of, early Gothic horror novel experiments with alchemy and science, what it means to be human, what our responsibilities to our progeny are, and so on. And this is another Folio Society book. Once again, just grab a free book from your local library, but there are nice editions if you want one. And then, what would be a better December celebration than Inferno? So this is Dante Alighieri's 1314 Divine Comedy. Not the whole thing, just book one, Inferno. And once again, there are many editions and many translations. Some of them feature some beautiful engravings by Gustave Dore that you might want to check out. Obviously, there will also be annotated versions and different things available. Your local library may well have several different copies to choose from. And I might mention one, which is the one I'm holding. This is a really terrific volume. This is by the Los Angeles artist Sandow Birk. So in this book, Sandow Birk and Marcus Harvey kind of reinterpret the text. And Birk also, the numerous gorgeous illustrations by Gustave Dore, Birk redoes those illustrations, but setting them in a contemporary California context. So let me read you the first six lines of three different translations of Inferno. So I'll give you Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's 1867 translation, Karen Carson's 2002 translation, and then the 2004 Sandow Birk and Marcus Sanders version. So you'll notice that the Longfellow version is more poetic, but the Carson version is maybe a little bit more accessible to our contemporary ears. And then the Birk and Sanders version is more contemporary and vernacular. So here's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, 1867. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. Ah me, how hard a thing it is to say, what was this forest, savage, rough, and stern, which in the very thought renews the fear. Karen Carson, 2002. Halfway through the story of my life, halfway through the story of my life, I came to in a gloomy wood because I'd wandered off the path away from the light. It's hard to put to words what that wood was. I shudder even now to think of it. So wild and rough and tortured were its ways. And then Sandow Birk and Marcus Harvey, 2004. About halfway through the course of my pathetic life, I woke up and found myself in a stupor in some dark place. I'm not sure how I ended up there. I guess I had taken a few wrong turns. I can't really describe what the place was like. It was dark and strange, and and thinking about it now gives me the chills. It was so bleak and depressing. So, different versions. Find the one that's available or the one that speaks more to you. The illustrations, either the Dore illustrations, the originals, or the Birk adapted illustrations are all gorgeous and really add some life to the text. Okay, so that's our December joy. Then in January, it is our tradition to read a book about Los Angeles. And so for January 2027, we have Los Angeles, the Architecture of Four Ecologies. Reyner Banham describes four ecologies that he finds in Los Angeles: Surfurbia, foothills, the plains of Id, and Autopia, and then describes the architectures that Banham finds in each of those ecologies. For February, we have Virginia Woolf's Orlando, described by some as Virginia Woolf's most joyful book. In this book, Orlando adventures with the queen, a Russian princess, two kings, an ambassadorship to Constantinople, and during that ambassadorship, he wakes up one day as a she. Then for March, we have The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. The Earthling Gertie I is the ambassador to a planet called Winter, where the inhabitants have only one gender. And then in April, May, June, we dive into some very light fare. For April, we have the Odyssey. For May, we have Hamlet. And for June, we have Ulysses. So I've picked those three in that order for a couple of reasons. One is that the Odyssey is kind of long. Hamlet's actually quite short. And Ulysses, again, is kind of long. So we have long book, short book, long book. But also, as I said a moment ago, the three tales do kind of overlap. James Joyce was inspired by the Odyssey, and Hamlet seems to also figure into those relationships. So this book I have is the 2018 translation by Emily Wilson. Once again, pick any edition and any translation that you like. You may have heard that there is now an internet fuss about this translation, and in typical internet spirit, the fuss occurred not in 2018 when this translation was published, but only now in 2026 when Christopher Nolan's film, The Odyssey, is soon to be released. And I think, as far as I know, we don't even know what translation Nolan used, but it is believed that he's working from the Emily Wilson translation. So now that it's a Christopher Nolan film, it's kind of a fuss, and there are many people online who believe that this is the best, most faithful, clearest, most accurate translation of the Odyssey, and then there are other people who believe that it's some sort of woke project that really distorts what the original text had to say. And I'll link in the meeting notes a really nice, brief 10-minute video where someone gives a very thoughtful, nuanced kind of consideration of what it is that a translation is, and what this particular YouTuber found really valuable and strong in Emily Wilson's translation, and then some things that he thought maybe were not as strong. Translation is always going to have a degree of interpretation. And in fact, in looking at the different translations for Inferno, I found one person who was asked to translate the book, or the epic poem, and refused, saying that it shouldn't be translated, that you should just take 6 months, learn Italian, and read it in the original. It might take more than 6 months to learn Greek, I'm not sure, but here's one translation. Again, pick the one that suits you. Then for May, we move on to one of William Shakespeare's greatest works, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, a story of a usurping uncle and a distraught young prince who contemplates being and not being. And then in June, we dive into James Joyce Ulysses. And once again, this is a very pretty version. I found this version from Other Press. It weighs over 7 pounds, and it features 300 illustrations by Eduardo Arroyo. It's quite a remarkable volume. I was tempted to buy an annotated version, since I know I'm going to need some help with Ulysses, but I wound up going for this because it just seemed like such a really unique volume. It's a little more expensive once again, but it's quite remarkable, with both full-page illustrations and also little margin illustrations just suffused throughout the book. Etc. So we have the Odyssey, almost 3,000 years old, Hamlet from about 1601, and then Ulysses from 1922, James Joyce with his crazy, legendary stream of consciousness and other modes of expression, taking some inspiration from those earlier works. The Odyssey covers a time period of 10 years. Ulysses covers a time period of 1 day. And I should say that once upon a time, I dated a girl named Jody. One day we were talking, she said something about Ulysses. I said, I've never actually read it, to which she replied, "I'm sorry, I can't date you anymore." So I did eventually try to read Ulysses, not right then, but at some later point, and I found myself lost pretty quickly. So I know it is a challenging book, which is why I'm looking forward both to having this really fun illustrated edition, but also to reading it with our group and maybe a little help along the way. I don't know if I'm any smarter now than I was then, but I'm committed to giving it a shot. And then finally, rounding out our first year, after making our way through 1,000+ pages of the Odyssey and Ulysses, we have a very slim volume, Helene Hanff's book, 84 Charing Cross Road, about 20 years of correspondence between herself, a New York writer, and a used bookshop in London. So it's a book about correspondence, and it's also a book about books. And I think it's a really lovely way to wrap up our first year of meetings. I guess technically a book or a set of correspondence like this could exist today, but realistically I think it's probably impossible. Instead of sending those paper letters across the breadth of the Atlantic, well, today we wouldn't even replace those paper letters with email or text. We would just go online, probably to Amazon.com, or maybe to the website of a used bookstore or a used book confab, and find the book we wanted, and we would just click add to cart, and we would have found the book with zero human interaction of any kind. For myself, I have found that digital tools, I won't even say the two letters that are basically part of every conversation we have today, but that and digital tools generally are almost always faster and more powerful. They're very efficient. If I'm a business person trying to get something done, digital is probably the best way to do it. But if I'm, instead of a business person trying to get something done, if I'm a human being trying to have a human experience, I think analog is just so powerful. We are analog beings, and we've done great things with digital. I've used plenty of digital myself. It's not like I'm not using it, but I've chosen to have at least a couple of things, including actually writing letters, be analog for me. So this small joy of communication and sending letters and waiting for replies will be the way we finish up our first year. So again, as I said, all these books will be available readily in your local library. You can get through the whole year for $0. As you've seen, I did find some collector editions that are kind of sweet if you'd like one, or an inexpensive edition at your local independent bookstore. But grab whatever edition you want, and let's dive in and read. Also, in addition to the meetings, the meetups, which are obviously the focus of this, where we can be face-to-face and maybe eat some food and drink and talk about these works, we will, on bookclubs.com, have some discussion spaces, both spoiler-free and with spoilers, where we can interact through the month as we're working on a book. I'm sure I'll be asking questions about Ulysses and probably other books as well. So welcome to LA's Difficult Book Club. I hope we have a not so difficult time reading these books and sharing them with each other. See you online, and see you soon face to face. Bye for now.